Hi students, once again welcome to this tutorial. The video will cover the photoperiodic responses in plants. It will broadly sum up the classical experiments which have helped to understand the perception, transmission of stimulus which leads to physiological functions in plants like flowering, plant growth, tuberization, and gene expression. So it is in continuation to the previous video which has already given us to understand the photoperiodism and the types of the photoperiodic responses. Here we will concentrate on photoperiodic responses, which will cover photoperiodic induction, classical experiments, perception and transmission of stimulus, and it will focus on the coincidence model and the primary idea about the florigin concept. First of all, we understand that plants sense and measure seasonal changes. And seasonal changes in ecosystem include day length, that covers the photoperiodism, and the temperature, which is falling under vernalization. We will be discussing in this video about the photoperiodism only. Photoperiodism is unique to both plants as well as animals, and is an ability of plants and animals to detect day length, and it depends upon endogenous biological clock. And this clock, which is in both animals and the plants, it helps them to calculate information from their environment for initiation of particular responses, namely flowering induction, dormancy, tuberization, gene expression, and in birds, the bird migration, and animals, the hibernation. So it's well calculated and well set by an indigenous biological clock. See, this is the biological clock. These are the external parameters: temperature, sunlight, blue light. This is the plant, and you will see that this plant will experience at the specific time of the day. There's the dawn of the day. There will be the opening of the stomata, and in a particular season, there will be the formation of the flowering. So specific time of the year, flower will be produced, and certain daily functions which are taking place in response to the light or the external stimuli. So that means there is present a photoperiod. A photoperiod throughout the year. Different seasons are there. Under different seasons, we have already seen that there will be short days, there will be long days, there will be short days and long nights. As per the seasons, winter, spring, summer, and fall, you will find different plants are producing their flowering at a particular time of the season. And rice will have its flowering at a particular season of the photoperiod, and tulips will have in spring, and this Arabidopsis thaliana, it's a long day plant, it will have flowering in the summer. Chrysanthemum is a short day plant, it will have a flowering in the autumn season. So that means this photoperiod, within their photoperiodic responses, there will be the flowering. It's called as the photoperiodic flowering. So we have already understood photoperiodism. Let us give a brief idea to refresh through the photoperiodism. We have seen it was first discovered by the Garner and the Allard in 1920 to 22 for the flowering response of Maryland mammoth. Maryland mammoth, as you understand, is a mutant variety of a tobacco, Nicotiana tabacum, and it's a giant tobacco plant which failed to flower during summer. So what they did, they took this during autumn, they moved the plant into the greenhouse, and plant flowered about Christmas time and produced seeds. Same plant was made to flower in summer when light hours reduced with artificial darkening in the greenhouse. We have already discussed this photoperiodism, but I want just to give you an idea about to refresh your memory about the photoperiodism. So we have seen there are types of the photoperiodism. There are different according to the specific photoperiodic response. Garner and Allard in US Department of Agriculture, Maryland, they recognized 5 categories of plants: short day plants, long day plants, day neutral plants, short long day plants, and long short day plants. We have already discussed them, but these plants which are here, they are showing their flowering response to the particular time, particular photo period. Suppose short day plants, they will require short days and long nights. Long day plants, they will require the long days and the short nights. We have already discussed them, and you have already seen that there was the Maryland menthe, which is an induced type, which is a spontaneous type of a mutant tobacco, and it was Garner and Allard. This is the basic structure which they named it as a dog house. Dog house, which is a dark chamber, because they gave photo periods, controlled photo periods. Under summer conditions, they gave the photo periods which were just like the autumn season. They checked, they controlled the photo period of it, and this is the dark house which they ultimately made, and their discovery created new this in allied sciences. It was a basic this discovery which led to the multi-crore chrysanthemum flowering industry, because you could get the flower at your desired season because of these manipulations of their photo periods. So we have now short day plant, we have long day plant, we have day neutral plants also. Now chrysanthemum, as we know, is growing in the autumn. It requires for flowering exposure to a critical period shorter than the critical period. Every plant has a critical period in 24-hour cycle. Spinach has an longer than a critical period, so it is not following to any critical period. They are unaffected by the lengths of the day. Here we have a photoperiodic response. This is in 24-hour cycle, 24-hour day length. This is the flowering. In short day plants, what you will see, short day plants will require lesser than 12 hours. That is shorter than the critical 12 hours. So here is a short day plant. When it reaches to this, which is the lesser than 12, it shows the flowering. Similarly, the long day plants, which is having a longer than the critical period, so that means its critical period is 14. It should be longer than the critical period, that is this, and it will show the flowering response. In addition to this, that means particular plant is sensing a particular day length. So there are photoperiodic responses. If you will see, this is an Arctic aspen plant which shows a dormancy. Normally it is growing under 24-hour cycle. So there is no dormancy. In 24 hours, there is no dormancy. But when there is a shortening of 2 days, 2 hours, that is 22 hours, the plant senses it as a short day. And then this 22 hours instead of 24 hours, there is no dormancy. They start germination. That means photoperiodic responses are in relation to their critical, less or greater than their critical photoperiods. Having said so, we understand that there are the photoperiodic inductions for flowering, conversion of a vegetative bud or a leaf primordia into a flower primordia under the influence of a suitable inductive cycles. What is an inductive cycle? One inductive cycle means an appropriate period in 24-hour cycle. It can be a particular period. Inductive conditions refers to the external stimuli essential for flowering. Inductive period refers to total duration of the inductive conditions. That means there are necessity for the inductive cycles in 24 hours. Plant takes few months to several years to flower depending upon plant types. We have annual plants. They flower every year or in one season. Biannual flowers after 2 years. Flower after 2 years. Perennial complete life cycle in many seasons and flowers every year. So the plants require short exposures to appropriate photoperiod. That is the inductive cycle. This inductive cycle may require one, it varies from plant to plant. Plants may require one or more inductive cycles for flowering. Plants initiate flowering under suitable day and night periods. A single cycle of 15.5 light, 8.5 day darkness. So 15.5 light hours, 8.5 dark hours is an inductive cycle for Xanthium. The number of inductive cycles varies from species to species. Soybean is a short day plant. It needs 2 inductive cycles. Henbeen requires 3 cycles. Salvia is a short day plant. It requires 17 inductive cycles. Plantigo lanceolata is a long day plant. It requires 15 to 25 inductive cycles. Some plants require continuous photoperiodic treatment. The phenomena is known as the steady state induction. So that means for flowering, inductive cycle is very important. Depending upon the species, inductive cycle varies from 1 to 25 depending upon the species. And now the experiments have been done. If more number of inductive cycles are given, it leads to early flowering. Xanthium is a short day plant, requires only 1 inductive cycle as we have seen, but it normally flowers after 64 days. Flowers even after 13 days if subjected to 4 to 8 inductive cycles. So you are increasing the inductive cycles, there is a shortening in the flowering response. Besides early flowering, number of flowers are also increased. So flowering also occurs during discontinuous inductive cycle. There are two. One is called the discontinuous inductive cycle. Another is the continuous inductive cycle. Discontinuous inductive cycle means you are giving an inductive cycle and then you are giving an unfavorable period. Then again you are giving the favorable, that is the inductive cycle. So inductive cycle given after unfavorable period is called as the discontinuous inductive cycle. So continuous inductive cycle promotes early flowering. Then discontinuous inductive cycles. So this was about the inductive, which is very important for the flowering also. Now the question is, where is the perception of photoperiodic stimulus? As I said, we'll be dealing with the classical experiments. The classical experiments, which will be grafting experiments, subjecting leaves to exposures and then seeing the responses. The photoperiodic stimulus is perceived by leaves of the plant. Experiments conducted by Nord and Chelyabinsk, who was a Soviet plant physiologist in 1961. It's confirmed that photoperiodic stimulus is captured by the expanded cotyledons or leaves. Photoperiodic induction occurs with a minimum vegetative growth. If a plant has only 1 leaf to 8 leaves, it will show the perception, perception of the photoperiodic stimulus. Through this chart, we will explain now. There are different types of the treatments which is given, the observations and the conclusions. First of all, an intact vegetative plant is kept under short day conditions. Is a short day plant. Flowering produced. Means once it is kept under short day conditions, it is a short day plant, it's flowering because it is a short day plant. And now it's being defoliated. Plant exposed to short day photoperiods. Because there are no leaves available, no flowering. Due to lack of leaves, no stimulus is perceived. Except one expanded leaf, plant is defoliated and exposed to short day conditions. Flowering is observed because you are keeping the minimum of one leaf, one expanded leaf. Even a single leaf in the plant can perceive the stimulus. Then you are taking the intact vegetative plant kept under long day conditions. Since it is a short day plant, you are subjecting it to a long day conditions. There is no flowering. As it's a short day, it fails to flower under long day conditions. Defoliated plant kept under long day conditions. There will be no flowering. In absence of leaves, stimulus is not perceived. Now, one of the leaves of intact plant receives short day conditions, whereas rest of the leaves are exposed to long day conditions. Now you have a plant which is a short day plant. You are subjecting one leaf to short day conditions and others to long day conditions. Since it is a short day plant, flowering occurs. Stimulus perceived by even single leaf is sufficient to induce flowering in the whole plant. These are the classical experiments which have been done. As we will see in case of a xanthium or the cocklebur plant showing photoperiodic stimulus. This is a short day plant. Xanthium is a short day plant, and when you are giving the short day to it, day length is short and nights are long, it shows the flowering. If you are defoliating it and giving the short day conditions, there is no flowering. Now if you are taking all the leaves down and you are keeping only one leaf and subjecting to short day conditions, it is showing the flowering. Now you are shifting them to the long day conditions. Under long day conditions, this xanthium will not produce flowers. You are defoliating it, it will not produce the flowers. Now what you are doing, you are keeping the flowers and you are giving the first short day exposure to one leaf and then subjecting it to long day conditions. Because of this one leaf, it has perceived the stimulus and it will produce the flowering. So leaves sense the day length and send a signal to the growing tip meristem to cause flowering. So the stimulus is perceived by the leaf and it goes to the tip and then it results in flowering. So this is the experiment which has been done by Karl Hammer and the James. This is James Bonner, 1938. This is their original laboratory equipment which they have used for covering. See, this is the slender, this is the base of the slender, this is the plant, xanthium plant, and then they have put it under a collar, and then this cylinder is kept over it to darken the area so that it doesn't perceive any leaf, any light, and then only a single leaf is kept which is exposed to a particular photo period to see the response. So this is the xanthium and it's showing the flowering. So here they can expose only one leaf and they're covering it with this cylinder. This is the experiment done on xanthium plant by Karl Hammer and the James Bonner, and this is their laboratory equipment which they have used to understand this response, perception of the response even to a single leaf. Same has been done experiment with morning glory. See, this is the morning glory. This is the another plant of the morning glory. You see here the flowering is done. No flowering is on the left side. See, it requires basically a long night or short days to flower. Morning glory is a short day plant. Plants on right and left were both grown in long days. They are grown in long days. So it does not flower. But here what was done? One of the left one did not flower. Right one flowered because is a short day plant. One of the leaf was covered with a tin foil before subjecting to the long days. That means there was kept one original leaf which had already perceived the short day response. So right one flowered as one of its leaf was covered with tin foil before exposure to long days. So that means only one leaf has perceived the short day plants. Here they have not perceived, they have not gone the flowering because they were subjected to the long day conditions. Transmission of the stimulus. Experiments performed by Garner and Allard proved that photoperiodic stimulus is transmitted from one branch to another branch through phloem to other parts of the plant. The stimulus can either be localized or systemic. Localized means stimulus travels only up to axillary bud of the photoinduced leaf. That is, the leaf which has perceived the response, vicinity of it is the axillary bud that will produce flowering, as has been seen in case of cosmos. Systemic is one where it travels throughout the plant. The stimulus is transported to all parts of the shoot system, as is seen in case of the xanthium. If one leaf is perceived, there is a systemic response. All along it, the axillary buds produces the flowers. So the perception is through the stimulus. Stimulus is through the leaves. Leaves perceive it, the light, and the stimulus is transmitted to the axillary buds, which can be localized or it can be systemic type. One more experimentation, the classical experiments which was done here. Out of two branches in a plant, one gets short day condition and another gets long day condition. Flowering occur on both the branches. Photoperiodic stimuli produced due to short day condition is transmitted from one branch which receives short day conditions to another. Basically, the plant under experimentation is a short day plant. Now it has two branches. On one branch, a short day condition was given. On other branch, a long day condition was given. But flowering occur on both the branches. Because it is a short day plant, it has perceived the short day and that has gone to the another branch also, where a long day was given. If all the leaves except one removed from a branch are given short day conditions and another branch gets long day conditions. As the situation is now, it being a short day plant, you are removing all the leaves, keeping one leaf there and you are subjecting them to the short day and another to a long day condition. Flowering is taking place there because single leaf which get a short day condition transfers the stimulus to the whole plant. Now if one branch is completely defoliated before getting short day conditions, while as the other branch has intact leaves and gets long days. Now you are converting it into a sort of a long day condition. Though plant is short day and you are removing all the leaves, only giving it the long day condition, so no flowering will be there because defoliated branch fails to perceive short day conditions because you are giving a long day to it, and because there's no stimulus is transmitted to another branch which gets long day conditions. Another classic experiment has been done that by way of the grafting. An intact vegetative plant receives short day conditions and is grafted to vegetative plant which receives long day conditions. Now you see a situation. You have a plant which is subjected to a short day condition and then is grafted on the plant which receives the long day conditions. Though plants are short day, yet flowering occurs in both the plants because photoperiodic stimulus is graft transmissible. It moves from one plant to another plant to a graft, stalk and cion. Cion passes it as stimulus to the stalk. It is the first experiment which was done on xanthium, subjected to long day, subjected to short day. Flowering is taking place here, and then subjected to long day and short day. So flowering is taking place here, and then third, long day, short day, there is no foliage kept. As a result, no flowering is taking place there. This is as we have already explained it. One more experiment has been done to understand that floragen is transmission by grafting. Floragen is now, we will discuss it in coming slides and in the next video also. Floragen is considered as a stimulus, as a signal which is responsible for flowering. So we have here an experiment, classical experiment done here. The leaf which is here has been induced with a particular photoperiod, and then it has been grafted on a plant where the immediate leaves have been removed, and you will see the induced leaf results in the formation induction. Induced leaf produces the flowers here, the white flowers here. So that means on the left side, induced graft donor, you are using this as a graft. This is a scion, this is a stalk. The graft is induced. It has been subjected to a particular day length which is required inductive cycle for it. SD, short day induced leaf grafted on a non-induced shoot produces flowers. So flowers are here. Now you are taking one more which is an uninduced graft donor. It is non-induced leaf grafted on non-induced shoot, leads to formation of vegetative branches. This clearly explains that it is a transmission of a stimulus from this induced leaf to this non-induced system, where the floral buds are the vegetative buds are converted into flowers. So this is a demonstration of a grafting of a leaf generated floral stimulus in short day Parrelia plant. In addition to this, you have also seen one more experiment that it is a graft transmissible. This is a short day plant where grafting, this is short day receiving the short day photoperiods, and it shows the flowering, which is systemic flowering, systemic type of a flowering here. Then you are subjecting this plant to short day, and at the same time you are grafting it here, grafting it with a plant which is subjected to long day conditions. To your surprise, you'll see this plant is basically a short day plant, but you are subjecting it to the long day. But here the stimulus is being generated, transmitted, and translocated to this, and as a result, this plant also produces the flowers. At the same time, if you are taking a flower plant which is subjected to long day, and another plant which is subjected to long day, and they are subjected to grafting, no flowering is taking place there. That means the transmission, that it's a graft transmissible. Whatever the nature of the stimulus is graft transmissible. Here you have number of these parts which are connected through grafts, and you are subjecting the one leaf of this plant is induced by long night or short days. That means this is a short day plant, as is Xanthium is, and now to others you are subjecting it to long days, long days, long days. But this is the plant which is here, which will receive the stimulus here, and these plants will show the all plants flower. That means it is graft transmissible also. The concept of circadian rhythm now, because we have already discussed that there is a biological clock, but at the same time there is a circadian rhythms or circadian cycle which is prevailing there. It's a natural endogenous process that regulates the sleep-wake cycle. So there is always a circadian rhythm, day and night rhythms. It repeats every 24 hours. These 24-hour rhythms are driven by a circadian clock. Circadian clock is involved in photoperiodic timekeeping. These are widely observed in plants, animals, fungi, and cyanobacteria. The hallmark of circadian rhythm is they are endogenous. They are inbuilt. They continue in absence of the day-night cues because it is inbuilt there. Suppose we'll discuss here with the leaf movements in beans. A bean plant kept in 12-hour light and 12-hour dark establish a particular circadian rhythm, up-down rhythm. When it is moved to a continuous light, plant maintains leaf movement. So normally it requires 12 hours light and 12 hours dark. When it is given and then it is taken to a continuous light, you see there, you see, suppose it is the normal plant, you are subjecting it to 12 hours light and 12 hours dark, it will show the rhythms, and then you are shifting it to a continuous light, again the rhythm is taking place there. They are showing the rhythms. So that means if this is under 12-hour light, 12-hour, and then you are keeping them in a continuous light, it shows a rhythm. It shows a rhythm. That means it's endogenous in nature. Measurement of the effects of the night breaks on a flowering. See, the experiment which was done here, it explains the role of circadian rhythms in photoperiodic timekeeping. It was done on soybean plants, Glycine mex, which is a short day plant. It was transferred from 8-hour light period to extended 64-hour dark period. So is a short day plant. After 8 hours of light, it was taken to an extended 64-hour dark period. Flowering response to night breaks shows a circadian rhythm. This experiment provides support for clock hypothesis. According to clock hypothesis, photoperiodic timekeeping depends on an endogenous circadian oscillator in relation to the external stimuli. So there are two stimuli. One is the internal stimuli. That is the internal rhythm, which is by means of biological clock. And the second is the external stimuli, which can be temperature, which can be light, which led to the clock hypothesis. So this experiment is done on the Glycine mex. If you will see, these are the 8 light period, 8 hours, and then it's given an extended period up to 64 hours, continuous dark period. But this dark period is interrupted during different durations of the night, extended night. The dots which are here shows the night breaks given here with the light, night break given here, here, and here. And then at different points, when you connect the points, you find that at one point of time, when a night break is given, this is the flowering percentage of the maximum flowering on this side. On this side, there is a continuous darkness, and these points depicts the night breaks. The light is given to it. And you see at this point, there is the highest flowering taking place. But at this point, that is at 40 hours, when a night break is given, there is no flowering. And similarly, at this point, there is much flowering, and here no flowering. So rhythmic flowering in response to night breaks. This black line depicts the rhythmic flowering response to night breaks. Night breaks at 26 hours, that is here, induces maximum flowering. At 40 hours, no flowering. A circadian rhythmicity to the ability of the light to interrupt flowering. A linkage of circadian rhythm and flowering is there. If you are summed up this is the reflection. This red line is the reflection of this flowering response. They are opposite to it. Now, if this is, we maintain that this will be a circadian rhythm, which will be there in the plant, and this is the rhythm which is created by the external stimuli. That means the night interruptions with light. It shows a rhythmicity, and there is a rhythmicity, and also you will see that they are slightly away from each other. They are not synchronized. This and this is not synchronized because it's a short day plant. This is the internal circadian rhythm. This is due to the external response. So this experiment led to the concept. That concept is named as coincidence model, which was given by E. Bunning in 1960. Irving Bunning, 1936, proposed that control of flowering by photoperiodism is achieved by an oscillation of phases with different sensitivities to light, as we have seen in night breaks. It led to the development of a coincidence model, which was given in 1960 by Bunning. Circadian oscillator controls the timing of the light sensitivities and light insensitivity phases. If we will see in long days, the two are synchronized. This is the, say, external response. This is the internal circadian rhythm. They are synchronized. As we have seen in the short day plant, as in case of soybean, this is the internal, this is the external, which has been seen there with the light sensitivity. So it's not synchronized. Though this concept was later on explained with an external coincidence model, which we will be dealing in the next video. But here it has been seen that when they are together synchronized, there is an overall level of there's a coincidence that is happening together of accumulation of a particular protein called constanase. So there is an accumulation of a protein which is called as constanase, which is controlled by a constans gene, and it regulates the expression of, once there is an accumulation, this much is the accumulation of the constanase, and this will result in the expression of another gene which is called as the flowering signal or flowering locust gene. That gene results in the formation of a florigen that is called as the FT. Once there is a production of the FT, that FT level above the threshold level results in the flowering. So this model, which was given here as a coincidence model, it will be dealt in the next video, where we will study it in detail in relation to the Arabidopsis plant. So that means the flowering response which is there, the stimulus which is there, was named as florigen. It was given a name because there is a flower to beget. It was Chilekyan in 1936 who suggested existence of universal flowering hormone named as florigen. Florigen is a hypothesized hormone-like molecule, though now it is not, that initiates flowering in plants. It is synthesized in leaves, transported in the shoot apical meristem SAM of buds and growing tips to promote floral transition, and it is universal in all plants. This is the earlier concept of the florigen, which was given by Mikhail Chilekyan in 1936, suggesting a name, a florigen, though which was not isolated, but now it is known that it is graft transmissible. It was suggested that time it is graft transmissible because number of grafting experiments were done there, as we have already seen. Even functions between species, it was seen different species. It can be transmissible between species. It was confirmed by flowering of a non-induced plants through grafting with induced plants. The nature of florigen has been widely debated. It is a potentious hormone that promotes flowering, often considered equal to anthocyanin plus gibberellins. But with the passage of time, with more research, florigen is a material substance, possibly macromolecule, either RNA are protein in nature, translocated from leaf to the apical meristem through phloem in photo-induced plants. It was done in 2005. And at the same time, it was also revealed the protein nature of it. It is encoded by flowering locust T FT genes. FT in Arabidopsis and HD3A Florigen heading data 3A in rice encodes for Florigen. These genes are encoding for Florigen. And et al. 2005 speculated that flowering locust T gene might be a mobile signal. Florigen is now known to be a globular protein, a molecular weight of 20 to 25 kilodaltons, and these are expressed in phloem of leaves under flower promotive day lengths, and Florigen, which is FT, is transported from leaves to meristem. In meristem, it partners with another protein known as FD, forms an FT-FD complex, and that triggers a cascade of events that leads to transformation of meristem into flower. Since this video was pertaining to the classical experiments only, we will be not dealing here with the molecular aspect of it. That will be dealt in the next video, where we will discuss the external coincidence model and also the molecular aspect of flowering in Arabidopsis, as has been done. Hope in this video you have understood the classical part of the photoperiodic response. If you like it, please subscribe the channel, which is at the first page of your video. Hope you have understood and it has cleared your ideas about this topic. Be safe and be happy till next video is uploaded, which will be regarding the current aspect of photoperiodic responses. Thank you very much.